Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Second Look Bible study, where a second look always takes you deeper into God's Word. Today we're continuing our series. Actually, we're approaching the end of our series on understanding the Old Testament, and we've been attempting to give you an overview of every book of the Old Testament. But more than just giving you a summary of each book, I have wanted to show you how all the books fit together to produce really one story. Today we're moving into the book of Proverbs, and the book of Proverbs is one of the poetic books of the Bible. If you remember, we've kind of used this little chart to show you. Prophetic books included Job, Psalms, Proverbs, and then we still have Ecclesiastes and the Song of Solomon to go. They're also referred to as the wisdom books. Ancient wisdom, and Proverbs really fits in to that category. We've looked at this timeline as well, and we saw that Job was really during the time of the patriarchs. Psalms covered the period of time really from the judges, actually the conquest, all the way through the exile period. Proverbs is pretty much contained within the period of time of the kingdom. And the Proverbs are primarily the works of King Solomon. Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon will fit into that period of time as well. So, the book of Proverbs is a timeless collection of wisdom sayings primarily attributed to King Solomon. They offer practical advice for righteous living. They were compiled over centuries, and it fits into the Old Testament as a part of the wisdom literature. It was used by the Jews for moral instruction, for character formation, and also spiritual reflection. Now, according to 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 32, it says Solomon spoke 3,000 proverbs, but only about 800 are included in this book, along with some from a few other writers. So, what is a proverb? It's a short, memorable saying that conveys divine wisdom for practical, moral, and spiritual living. Now, we have proverbs in our day. Can you think of any of them? For example, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Well, we've heard that before. Or a picture is worth 1,000 words. All right? Or how about absence makes the heart grow fonder? I'm not sure that's really a true proverb. But nevertheless, it's one that we're familiar with. Or actions speak louder than words. So, in our last lesson, we looked at the Psalms. And we saw that they appeal to the heart and encourage prayer and worship. The book of Proverbs appeals to the mind and encourages right living. Now, some have said that the Psalms reflect the language of the heart, while Proverbs encourages the discipline of the mind. And I think that's a great statement. Let's take a quick peek at our cartoon from Walk Through the Bible for the book of Proverbs. We see here an owl at the chalkboard, and he's sharing a proverb, a fool and his money are soon parted. We chose the picture of the owl because throughout history, for some reason, the owl has been attributed with being wise. Now, there are a number of reasons for that. One of the things that we see with an owl is that they are extremely calm. They are a type of bird that makes no sound when it's flying. They're able to see in the dark, and the ancients interpreted that ability to see in the dark as seeing what others could not see. Therefore, they're wiser than anyone else. Now, I don't know how true that is, but it does help us to remember the book. The book of Proverbs is the book of wise sayings. So let's kind of move ahead here and see if we can understand a little bit more from this particular book. Now, who wrote the Proverbs? Well, from what we read, what we see, the primary author is King Solomon, someone who is known for his wisdom, and he's credited with most of the Proverbs, especially chapter 10 through 29. Now, there were several other people who added to the book of Proverbs, and they were, first of all, Agur, or Agur. He wrote Psalm 30. And then we have King Lemuel, and he wrote Psalm 31. And then there were a number of anonymous sages that also contributed to the book. Some of them may have been quoting passages from Solomon as well. He's the primary author. Now, the date of writing is around 970 to 930 BCE. Solomon reigned between 970 and 930 BCE, but the book was likely compiled between the 10th and the 6th century BC, spanning several generations. Now, it is estimated to have taken 300 to 400 years, with later editors organizing the sayings into thematic themes. And so we see that this book has taken a long while for it to become complete. So, how does it fit into the overall New Testament? Well, we've talked about how it is a part of the wisdom literature alongside Job and Ecclesiastes. It offers ethical and spiritual guidance rather than any kind of historical narrative or legal instruction. And it reflects Israel's pursuit of moral ground, that which is grounded in the fear of the Lord. And that is one of the key phrases that we're going to find in the book of Proverbs. So who are some of the key people that we see in the book of Proverbs? Well, the only names mentioned in Proverbs are Solomon, son of David, so both of those appear. We're going to see Agur, son of Jakeh, and then also a King Lemuel. Now, we really don't know who this King Lemuel is. Some think it's a personification of Solomon because there doesn't appear to be any real person in history. And so we see just these people, and they're never mentioned in the Proverbs themselves, only before the beginning of the list of Proverbs in each chapter, so we know who wrote them. Now, what we do see, however, are some characterizations in the book of Proverbs that I think are really important for us to understand. First of all, we see this idea of the wise and the foolish. All right, the wise and the foolish. Now, these are recurring characters that illustrate moral choices. What are you going to choose? Are you going to choose that which is wise or that which is foolish? And then you have Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. Again, these are another two voices that we hear in the Proverbs. They're found primarily in chapters 1 through 9, and they represent virtue and temptation. All right? And then we see also this father and son characterization found in the book of Proverbs. It's a literary framework used to convey instruction and legacy. It is thought that Solomon passed on many of these wise sayings to his children. Now, what are some of the central themes that we find in this particular book? Well, the central themes include, as I stated already, the fear of the Lord, the foundation of wisdom. And we find that in Proverbs 1:7 and also Proverbs 9:10. We're also going to see moral integrity, honesty, humility, diligence, and justice. We're going to read about speech and the power of the tongue, power of words to heal or to harm. We're going to see relationships. Many of the Proverbs deal with friendships and marriage and parenting and leadership. And then finally, the final theme that I want to point out to you is this idea of work and wealth. Hard work, generosity, and wise stewardship. These are all traits that the book of Proverbs is going to really try to bring forth. Now, what are some of the key verses? Now, here's where I ask you to get involved. What are your favorite Proverbs? I posted that on Facebook prior to our lesson, and we had one person respond, and her proverb was a little bit on the humorous side. Go take a look at that there. There are a lot of great verses, and I'd love for you to share yours. And just put it in the margin in one of the comments, whether you're watching this live on Facebook or whether you're watching one of the reruns, or perhaps you've stumbled across this on my YouTube channel and are responding in that way. My favorite, or at least one of my favorites, is the theme of the book, and that's Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And I've taught on this quite a number of times. What is the fear of the Lord? I think it's being aware of his presence. The fear of the Lord. And I've likened it to how my driving improves when I see a policeman in my rearview mirror. The first thing I do is I slow down. Now, I may not have been over the speed limit, but that's just my initial response. Because I see him in my rearview mirror, it makes me do what's right. All right? The fear of the Lord does the same thing. When we're aware of God's presence, our behavior changes. And that's one of the major themes of this book. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And then there's this particular passage, and I've got them here. We've got Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord, but Proverbs 3:5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. And so we see this idea here of fearing the Lord, being aware of his presence, and not leaning on our own understanding, but leaning on him. And then we can take a look at another idea here, and that is Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. And then Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guide your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And then we have Proverbs 15:1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Or one of my other favorites is Proverbs 22, verse 6. Start off children on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. I believe the book of Proverbs is one of the great books of the Bible, and it teaches us wisdom, and it teaches us right behavior. I believe it is important to instill the principles from the book of Proverbs into our children. And I think this has a lot of different faces, but I kind of see it as character development. Becoming more like Jesus is really what we're talking about. God desires us to instill these principles into the hearts and minds of our children. Now, we'll cover a little bit more on that in just a few moments. But what is the relevance of the book of Proverbs to the New Testament? Well, we see that Jesus' teachings echo the Proverbs, especially with his emphasis on humility and mercy and wisdom. Secondly, the book of James draws heavily from the Proverbs, especially regarding speech and conduct. Not simply saying you have faith, but putting faith into action. And then we've got the parables in the Gospels. They reflect the style and the moral clarity of the Proverbs. So let's look at some different types of Proverbs. There are quite a number here, so stay with me. The types of Proverbs include contrastive Proverbs, comparative Proverbs, instructional Proverbs, numerical sayings, and observational Proverbs. So let's stay on this slide here for a few moments. A contrastive proverb presents two opposing ideas. It often uses the word but to highlight the contrast. For example, Proverbs 10 verse 1 says, "A wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother." And that's a great example of a contrastive proverb. The second one that I want to mention to you is a comparative proverb. Now, comparative proverbs use the idea of better than or like to compare two ideas. For example, Proverbs 16, verse 32, "Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city." And so we're comparing those, and again, it becomes a very important part of this idea of types of proverbs. And then there are instructional proverbs. This is a direct command or advice, often with moral or spiritual imperatives. For example, again, my favorite, Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understandings. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." So you see that this type of proverb is going to offer practical guidance for righteous living. And then the fourth one are numerical sayings. These are proverbs that use a numbered list to build anticipation and to emphasize completeness. For example, Proverbs 6, verses 16 through 19. I won't read it all, but it says, "There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him." Now, these highlight key moral failings in a memorable format. The numbered list is used to build anticipation and to emphasize completeness. And the emphasis there is on the 7th thing. All right, that's what it's all leading up to. And then we have observational proverbs, which was our last type. So observational proverbs. These describe a truth based on observation of life or nature. For example, in Proverbs 20, verse 4, it says, "Sluggards do not plow in season, so at harvest time they look but find nothing." It teaches real life consequences and patterns. And again, God is trying to encourage us in his word to do the right thing and to be the right kind of person. Now, there are a number of really unusual facts in the book of Proverbs. This book includes numerical riddles, animal analogies, and satirical humor. For example, an example of a numerical riddle might be Proverbs 30, verse 18 and 19. It says, "There are 3 things that are too amazing for me, 4 that I do not understand. The way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a snake upon a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas, and the way of a young man with a woman." This poetic riddle builds suspense and invites reflection. The 3-4 structure is a part of a Hebrew literary device that emphasizes the final item. It's not just a list. It's a meditation or a mystery that the writer of the proverb is trying to get across to us. And then there are the animal analogies. For example, Proverbs 6, verses 6 through 8. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provision in summer and gathers its food at harvest. We see that throughout the book of Proverbs, there are numerous examples of animals that are designed to teach us something. The ant, for example, becomes a model of diligence and foresight. There are other animals mentioned, like ants and lions and snakes and locusts, that illustrate virtues or vices in a way that's easy to remember and to visualize. And then there's satirical humor. A good example of this might be Proverbs 26, verse 11. And it says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly. Now, this is biting satire. It's meant to shock and to provoke. The grotesque image drives home the absurdity of repeating foolish behavior. Proverbs uses humor not to entertain, but to awaken moral clarity. So the book of Proverbs is a book that is a timeless treasure chest of wisdom that parents can use to shape the hearts and the minds of their children. It's short, vivid sayings that offer practical advice on honesty and humility and diligence and respect and self-control. Virtues that are essential for strong character. By reading and discussing Proverbs together, parents can plant seeds of discernment and godliness in everyday situations, helping children not only to know what is right, but also why it matters. These ancient truths are wrapped in memorable language and real-life relevance. They become a compass for the wise in living a world that is full of distractions, that tries to take us away from the principles of God. Now, in my last lesson, I mentioned that I was encouraged to read 5 Psalms a day, allowing me to read the entire book of Psalms in just 30 days. I hope you have started doing that. At the same time, I was encouraged to read 1 chapter of the Proverbs each day, which would enable me, again, on a 31-day month, to read the entire book of Proverbs in 1 month. Simply take the day of the month. Today's the 25th, so you would read Proverbs 25. Reading a chapter a day helps you to internalize the timeless truths gradually, and it makes them easier to apply to your life. Many verses in Proverbs prompt self-examination. Am I living wisely? Am I guarding my tongue? Am I honoring God with my actions? Now, Proverbs cultivates a heart and a life of humility, teachability, and reverence. It's an excellent practice that I encourage each and every one of you to try. Read 1 chapter of the Proverbs every single day. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate you being with me, whether you are live or whether you're watching one of the reruns. I appreciate you being here. I covet your prayers, Marcia and I both, and we are praying for each of you. Do make sure that you get an opportunity to take a look at my YouTube channel. I post a link every week on Facebook with the new Bible study that has been uploaded there, and you can see all of the Bible studies I have done, and they're categorized by theme, making it much easier to find what you're looking for. Thanks again for watching. I look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.